Guardians of the Galaxy is great. Forget about the average Avengers, it has it all. The graphics are cool, the gameplay is mega satisfying, the soundtrack was pure genius and honey to the hearts of those who remember the hits of the 80s and 90s. And the complete masterpiece was the creation of a real band, from which Peter Quill took his nickname. We're of course talking about the Star-Lord band. Here's a great curiosity, which immediately bought my metal heart. The authors recorded the entire album, which you can listen to without any problems at the very beginning of the game. I recommend to check it yourself. If you're looking at a decent game in Marvel Universe, don't hesitate any longer. That's all from me if you ask for my review. Let's move to the technical matters. In today's episode we'll take a look at the game running on PlayStation consoles. We're talking here on the base model, PlayStation 4 Pro, and of course PS5, as well as a small bonus, the version captured on Nintendo Switch. Why as a bonus? Well, somehow I missed the information about its existence, and in total, just for the last moment before recording the video I fired up the demo. The edition for Nintendo handheld is a version powered by the cloud, which means the graphics are rendered on the base station on external servers and sent to the console, relieving its computing power. Let's perhaps start by discussing the level of graphics in general. We are dealing here with a cross-gen title, which fortunately it's not a serious complaint in the case of Guardians. The developers did a great job by creating the setting that players would not look at with a grimace regardless of the platform. Except maybe on Switch, but more on that in a moment. Sure, Guardians is more of a corridor experience, but the action is fast-paced and the gameplay is full of spectacular scenes, and the number of objects and graphical effects visible on screen at one time is truly overwhelming. Which is great, because experience the game offers is very similar on any hardware, except maybe on the Switch. So what are the biggest differences between platforms? Of the obvious, we have to mention the resolution. While PS5 offers two display modes, 4K 30 frames per second and 1080p at 60. In case of previous generation console, we are talking about 1080p 30 on PlayStation 4 Pro and even lower on the base PlayStation 4 model. I'm guessing 900p, but I won't cut off my hand for that. At the far end, of course, the Switch version, with its soupy image and resolution probably not even hovering around 720p. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course. As you can see, this version is very different from the competition. In fact, all aspects seem to be reduced to the lowest level. The details of textures and models, image sharpness, all this makes it difficult to look at the game in motion. Resolution is not the only difference. Another are changes in lighting and shadows. These are not drastic differences, but the biggest jump can be seen between generations of consoles. It is worth noting at this point that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X console are to receive an update in the future, adding support for ray tracing. The feature is already available on PC, but I have not yet tested it, so I refrain from the comment on this. Yes, there was a day one patch on consoles, numbered 1.3, but its only purpose was to introduce photo mode and improve its game stability. The other differences I've noticed is additional objects rendered by consoles, like an example shown on the screen right now. Either it's my imagination or they don't have a lawnmower on the PS5. The geometry of objects is another example of the advantage of more powerful platforms. Okay, we've discussed the cutscene graphics, which undoubtedly releases the processing power of console. So how does the fluidity of animation benefit from that? It's pretty good, albeit with a few bumps. The PS4 and PS4 Pro offers a fairly stable 30 FPS experience, both during combat and the more intense sequences. Unfortunately, things aren't buttery smooth throughout the gameplay. There are times, completely random in my opinion, when animation on both consoles can crunch down to as low as 20 FPS. This happens sporadically during both regular gameplay and the cutscenes. I also note that the PS4 and PS4 Pro versions were installed on the external SSD, a 500GB Western Digital Black D30. I'm preparing a separate video about it. If you're curious, stay tuned. PS5 edition, as I mentioned, offers two display modes, quality and performance. The first aims at stable 30 FPS with the best possible visuals, while the second at a reduced resolution offers a smooth 60 FPS. And that's basically what I can confirm. Of course, I've experienced drops a few times, but they are much more sporadic, as in case of past gen consoles, and their values are not so drastic. At least I haven't experienced such. Nevertheless, I have to note them. At the grey end I left the Switch version, here again paired with PS4 edition. As you can see, it's not good. I've played the game on the console's Wi-Fi connection. According to connection test I performed on the Switch, the speed at the time was 50.6 megabits per second download and 17.3 upload. As you know, the speed can vary depending on network load. The issue of the graphics itself has already been touched upon, so now I'll focus on the smoothness of the gameplay. And as you can see, it's far from satisfactory. Yes, as the counter shows, we get the desired 30 FPS, but it's paid with a cruel frame time. In short, frame time is basically the time that the platform needs to display successive frames of animation. If the intervals are the same, then we see a smooth image. If it's jerky, as in this case, then although 30 FPS, which should be a guarantee of stable gameplay, looks really jaggy, and thus not very comfortable to watch. There is nothing else for me in this situation but to advise not to play the Guardians on a Nintendo console. The current quality of the port at the moment leaves much to be desired. I'm really curious about the hardware specification that drives this version. On the one hand, cloud technology allows you to almost completely relieve the computing power of the console, which in a way implies the use of a much more powerful hardware that actually generates the game's graphics. On the other hand, however, the end result in the form of slash, which is displayed on the screen, makes these guesses uncertain. Out of curiosity, I checked a few other titles from the Switch library that are also available in European online store as streaming service. And the results are, well, curious to say the least. Control looks decent. The same goes for the latest Hitman. Interestingly, both productions offer two display modes, improved graphics and higher performance. The Guardians has none. In the case of a Plague Tale, we have a similar result as of Guardians. The soup is dripping from the screen and it's hard to call the game experience comfortable. And this, my friends, is the technical part of the Guardians of the Galaxy, a very successful game which will certainly satisfy fans of Marvel stories. Small technical glitches in no way ruin the fun of the game, and their randomness allows us to believe that they will be eliminated soon, during one of the upcoming patches. Let's not forget about the announced improvement in the form of ray tracing support. And with that optimistic accent, I think I will end today's episode. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!
Never known another way.